This is BBC.
Yes, but when you...
All right, everybody, I think we can get started. Okay, so this is the last activity. And again, it's going to be a little introduction. You're going to do some work and then a bit of reflection at the end. But I read this last night. No, it was this morning. And then I asked if they can please print it for you because it highlights some of those issues that we spoke about yesterday and specifically the assessment bit. So I'm just going to do a brief introduction. I'm going to ask you to read this. We'll just have a brief, just to get your ideas and thoughts about it. Okay, so we spoke a lot about the thinking behind using the tools. We spoke about designing activities, and when you design activities, for us, and like I said, there are different learning theories, there are different approaches, there are different models. This is just but one model that we think, and in our experience, has been very useful. And if you look at your teaching and learning policy, you will also see it speaks about authentic learning and authentic assessment. So what is our understanding of authentic learning, authentic activities, authentic assessments? What is your understanding of that?
I think authentic. Is it relevant?
Is it relevant? So it's about relevance.
Yes.
What kind of relevance?
Meaning, is
Real world.
Real world. Is it valid? Is it reliable? I think it combines all of that. And also, is it fair? Did you teach what you're assessing? There's no point in assessing something you have not taught.
Exactly. But beyond, did you teach, or are you assessing what you taught? The what you taught bit is also very important because you can teach something that is not relevant, but you are still assessing what you're teaching, but it's maybe not really relevant. So that's why the real world relevance comes in. You wanted to say something.
To say exactly what you said now as well.
Oh, okay.
Assess what you've taught, but you also have to teach what you will be assessing.
Exactly. Anyone else? What does it mean, or what is your understanding of authentic? When is something authentic?
I think it also means is what you are teaching them going to help them in future, or it's just for that time only, then they have nothing to do with it in future.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think, somebody spoke about Shakespeare. Was it you? And
Because she's teaching theoretical physics in chemistry and whatever. Yeah, theoretical concepts in chemistry.
He'll tell us distortion.
how you as mathematicians, how often have you not heard, and I still hear it from some students, and my daughter sometimes, when we have this whole conversation and debate about it, but she'd come home and say, why are we learning this? When am I ever going to use this? And especially regarding maths, and that's why I'm speaking to our maths colleagues here.
They say they're never going to use it.
Yeah. And what's your response to that?
They never use it either.
But you know, somebody asked me that, and
Yeah.
just the previous week he bought tiles to tile his whole kitchen. And then I said, how did you know how many tiles to buy? You had to go and work on the area of the kitchen.
Yes. Yes.
You use maths.
Yeah.
You go to the shop, you buy something, you get your change. You check your change.
Yes.
That's maths.
Yes. Yes. So
Subtle maths, but it's still maths.
yes. So those are nice examples. Those are nice examples. So do we work that in when we actually do the activities?
The thing is, our students struggle to take a root problem and convert it to numbers. Now, I see
I find it
that
very difficult.
even with my Susies, my wonderful Susies have got 70 plus in the exams in undergrads.
Yeah.
But they struggle to convert it to numbers.
And so when we speak about authentic learning, activities, assessment, and so on, it is about then making those links explicit. Because often our students don't get that. They don't see those links. And so it's really just about making the links explicit. So if you're saying that your activity, if we look at those elements, authentic learning elements, are you familiar with authentic learning and Jan Harrington's work on authentic learning? I should.
About making links. How far do I need to go back? Because, for instance, we've got this simple pictures of our nanotechnology crystals, and then you put on scale, and you use the scale to get the size of those things. But my students don't understand the concept of the scale on a map. I mean, where do I start? Do I have to start at some A? My students don't understand the concept of brackets and mathematics. Where do I start? You know, an example of an area. We were looking at the surface area of the crystal. And the lady came up with the for area, she got something, no, it was the other way around. The volume came with something to the power 2. But now, area and volume will never be, it's like a mixed up formula, so she mixed the formulas. And if you understood the fundamentals, you know, volume is something to the power 3, and area is something to the power 2. Doesn't matter what you multiply. That's a concept. Doesn't matter if it's a sphere or block or what.
So, I mean, I don't have the answers again. I'm going to say, but
it's like speed. The call speed, and that relates to the speed of my reaction, the speed of my heating. So they don't understand speed. So I tried to link it, but I could see they don't understand what I'm talking about. The speed stuff. Where do I start?
Yeah. The question of where do I start, if we go back to those questions, the plan, the 5 questions, like where do we start? It really boils down to who is in front of us, who are our learners. So to maybe start with that, and you can't address all of the whatever's missing. The other day, yes. So can I maybe ask, because you're all in that same boat where you're sitting with students and you've got to somehow compensate for what's not there. How do you deal with that? Can I get somebody to yeah?
For our department, we see first year students, right, for ICT skills. Then there's certain courses that they need to do advanced. Meaning the things they've learned in ICT, they need to keep that as much as they now need to do the advanced part of the module. So what we do, we found that you end up having to go back on the fundamentals again, which again is time consuming. So what I did was, I'd put a revision exercise that will remind them of the fundamentals that they were supposed to have. So that in class, I concentrate on what I am supposed to do for the day. If
and
you find
you do
still have issues, it's there for you.
So the supplementary stuff is on Blackboard, and your time in the class is focused on what needs to be done. Is that something that could
I can't go
help?
back for 12 years. That's
Yeah.
the need I have in our students. This particular guy, my 80–90% student, he doesn't know his physics chemistry. He was planning to go research in Lisa, and he had to write to that professor. I said, show me the letter before you send it. I could just check your English, just in a very nice way. He sent it off. I could find the letter, I could show you. And he ended up, he didn't use capital letters, it was a terrible letter. He wrote like you write on your WhatsApp. And he ended up, please, Professor, or something like that. And he don't write like that. He said, write something, your favorable consideration will be highly appreciated. There's ways of saying the same thing, rather. No, I mean, if that professor looks at this, he's in the sky. It's stupid. And it's one of our best students. But the image is portrayed that if it goes to industry like that, it's going to be a disaster. They're going to label it as limited. And once you label it as limited, your career's gone. And that's why I'm upset about our students. Because if I send them into the world, they're going to suffer.
So what does it say about entry requirements, and what does it say about support, and how do you actually guide them towards that kind of support that they need, and how do you bring it into your module? Because sending them off to the writing center where it's not it's sort of a separate thing, additional thing, is also not ideal. So how do you, so those are the kinds of things that we need to grapple with and somehow try to assist. And I know what you can do is, there's a limit to what you can do. But I think that those other conversations, I mean, there's so much coming out of these sessions, and that's why it's great. And I'm sure you're not the only one, or others, probably you're experiencing the same thing. So is there something that you've done that have made a little bit of a difference? Or is it something that you kind of accept and this is just the way it is?
Sorry, like if I give them an assignment or I give them something to do, I first give them instructions, clear instructions like a grade 1 to do. So if I want them to do a PowerPoint, I show them what I expect of them for a PowerPoint. I even give them a structure, maybe that's like too much.
So that's the scaffolding part.
So because they don't know how to organize their thoughts, so I gave the second years this year an assignment where they have to develop their own eco-trail. So there's steps in their books, so I just help them to show what the outline of the PowerPoint or what I expect of them. Like 90% of them still didn't do it the way I showed them to do, but I try to show them what they need to do, and in terms of referencing, I show them how to reference. So I just show them, if I want them to do something, I show them and give them instructions. And then if they still struggle, I will ask the tutor that we only got in the second semester to work with them on referencing or do PowerPoint. And it's a difficult.
Okay.
So as far as traders, you have only a few babies. So for this one baby, I was splitting up 2 years, and I haven't got it on first level. There's no mistakes. And she's trying. I don't know, it's like, it's so popular, and it comes back to, as you said, to the entry level. They are now taking students that got a 3. That means they didn't get 50% at school level, but now I have to make sure they get 50 now. That's not possible.
And then maybe it comes down to the what's possible and what's not. And we help and do what we can, but the point is to do something, and within your means, within your power, within what's possible.
We try, but it's not as so really much. We are, the two people, Bishop and Mrs. Carla, the with our research team, we're trying to uplift our postgraduate language.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're really much.
Sorry, there was just a question, yeah? Or a comment?
I wanted to comment. It's unfortunate that the education system at school is way too different when they come here. So we can do as much as we can, but we can't really be like teachers at school.
Right.
Because there's no time for that. We try as much as we can. You use extra hours of your time when you could either be with family or doing your own research and so forth. But that's a little as much as you can do. If students can't help themselves, what's the point of always trying to help, but they themselves don't want to do it? So really, we're trying our best, because I look at it as we are building tomorrow's society, generations. I mean, they need to be responsible now, here, so that when they go into the workplace, they know how it works. But now, if we are always going to be spoon-feeding, it's also creates the society that we have now, where they're always protesting to get free things. I mean,
That's a very controversial.
Because really it's not their fault. You know, I was amongst teachers on Sunday, and what they told me that lately, it's a prerequisite from the department that you cannot have, let's say, more than 3 learners fail in your class. And most of them, they will be instructed, give them 10% across the board just to pass them. And they are pushed and pushed. And if you are saying like, maybe, what is the school age? 17, we are still in grade 5. They said, no, that child cannot be in grade 5. That child, whether she passes or fails that year, he or she will be pushed till she gets to matric, because his or her age doesn't allow her to be in that grade. So you can imagine these poor learners have been pushed and pushed and pushed. And what is the pass mark at school? It's 40, it's 35. They get here, they need to obtain 50%.
But do those learners that get pushed and fast-tracked, do they actually make it to VUT?
I've had a new
40 plus.
Yeah, there's 3. The criteria should have been 4. It used to be 4, and now we don't get the numbers. So since I think it's last year, we've dropped it to 3, which means we take people that are 45% in chemistry or science, now I have to uplift them. But I'm building on thin air.
Yeah.
I have to teach here, but there's 12 years missing.
I've learned something as well, that those who've been pushed till matric, if they are not coping in matric, they are modulators. That means you won't be allowed to write the 6 or 7 subjects. You'll only write 3 subjects. Then the following year in June, you will write off all the subjects that are remaining. And currently, some are doing because they want to write everything.
What about the extended programs? The lady, let's just hear from the extended.
We get all those problems. Now, with the extended program, they speak that in a year or 2, it's going to be compulsory to start off with the extended program. We work with different faculties, so all your problems, we are dealing with it on a daily basis. We have contact time, 40 hours a week with students. Blackboard is a weekend after hours during lunch break, although we are using it quite extensively. What we basically do is the first 6 months. We get from engineering, IT, the humanities school, management, so all over. The first 6 months, we get everyone up to par. So we start at grade 10, getting them, those who pass, you can work with them. Then the next 6 months, they go into their different schools, engineering, they still have the same subjects, but then they specialize in that specific subject. They do language literacy with them. So to teach them how to read and write, they can't read, they can't write, they don't know what a letter is. So that stays exactly the same. Then they do maths. Computers is, everyone has to do that. Even the
How do
art
you teach
school,
them the basic maths?
Basic
Adding fractions, multiplying
we
fractions.
do. Even the art school now has maths. It's compulsory. They must have maths. So we have 4 different levels of maths from engineering, IT. So we are dealing with all those problems. And they are so actually overworked that the best of the best will go to first year. And 80% of our students are cum laude students.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to comment on that.
They learn how to
Yeah.
learn.
Those students,
Sorry, these advices.
we've checked.
Mm.
In our department, in chemical engineering, we've checked. Students coming from the foundation program finishes in a shorter time than the students coming from the DRIC with good marks.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
They finish in a much shorter time.
So what
That's
are the
brilliant.
plans to get this? What are you like? Are you increasing the number of programs next year? Or, because you said in the next 2 years it's going to be compulsory for everybody.
That's the Department of Education. They're busy working on that. Yeah, with the new programs with the DUT, we're now extending to those. But there are still management. We do the whole humanities school, but with the new education that comes out, with the new principles that's coming out, we're starting doing that as well. But we're waiting for the Department of Education. As from this year, it's now part of a 4-year diploma course. Previously, it was a separate year
That
course.
was the bridging course.
Yeah.
Now it's an extended.
Extended,
So
yeah.
this year it's going to be a real extended.
So now if
Yes.
they enroll, it's a 4-year diploma course.
Yes.
They still go to first year next year. It's still the same, but it's
But
a
there's
diploma
extra.
course, and they cannot change anymore. Because what they've done is they took art or anything to get in, thinking they can change later on. They can't. They're stuck for 4 years.
So next year it's extended programs for all humanities students.
It's still.
No, it can't
No, it's still.
That's It's only for certain.
For the whole
non-qualified
humanities.
only.
The art, the safety,
The art,
the
applied sciences and computer science also.
Yeah, they do that as well. They do. Yeah. They do. The only part of management we do is the cost accounting.
Okay.
So now, we always did sport and management and marketing. Now, it's the first time in 4 years that we're doing that next year again.
Okay. So, seems you're doing wonderful work, and it seems there's a bigger need for that kind of thing. I mean, based on what people are saying, the level where the students are at. So you obviously can't take all of them. So we need to think about, you know, the students that are doing the mainstream degree and not extended. How do we support them? And what is possible and what is not possible? And I think that's what a lot of you are grappling with. Saying, you know, time won't allow me. I recognize these are the challenges, but I, as an individual or as one department, cannot do this. And those are the challenges that.
And also CAD, like how can
Center for
we get
Academic.
some suggestions, tutoring, mentoring, whatever we can do. We also need
To
those
these-
suggestions, the feedback, so that we can feedback to the units who do that type of thing. Research we have a writing center, we have a math center. Research skills and things like that. There's this gentleman that I was talking about, the Professor Wadi. Do you use these services for your students? Yeah, so there's things that people don't even know about. So somehow, maybe we should have a roadshow, a CAD, to go to each and every department, not just the faculty board meeting, because not everybody attends, but as much as possible, go around and say what we have to offer for research, for tutoring, for mentoring, and get your inputs. No, the tutoring doesn't work because this is wrong with the tutoring. Or, you know, we need that type of thing. Yes?
In our time visitors in our courses, but I was thinking of if the retreats are finished in, say, November, they have to now go, if you're not planning to come to the UT, you're planning to do something in science, you have to go through this introductory course and we take you through basic mathematics. If you don't pass it on online, we don't want you here. We have to go, we put videos in, you have to go through the videos until you get it, and until you pass it, and then you can go.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut it short there because we're going to run out of time. There was one, I don't know if you had a question or comment earlier. Oh, okay. Somebody had a hand up. Are they?
What do you want to say about it?
I wanted to know. It's going to be a very lengthy one. Maybe I might see you today.
Okay, maybe you can have that discussion.
Yeah.
About the
maybe
system.
you can help others.
Yes, because I was.
Can help others. We have a challenge. When I started last year, second semester, so there was a tutor already when I started, and she took all the single subjects. But this year we did not get tutors for the whole semester. That was the first semester, and I had 12 hours that I had to go to class by myself for the 4 subjects and set the test and all of that. The tutor was only appointed end of May when the students were going to write exams. So basically we've done everything. We didn't need a tutor, but from January we've been asking, no, there was no tutor.
Yeah, you see
so
what
it's a problem because we still have the challenge of we want to give them extra opportunity, but we cannot. We don't have. Because I have to be in class for the whole day.
Yeah. There's things of all the services of CAD. Can I just start out by saying that none of them are funded by VUT. We go and look for funding. They're funded by UCDP. And that is the strategy. Like something as important as tutoring, mentoring, all of that. And UCDP. Even the Blackboard, like people say you pay so much, we were much open source, Moodle and all of that, but VUT never paid a cent towards Blackboard. Up until this day, it's not VUT's money. UCDP and all of the funding that we have to get these things to be paid. So, and UCDP and the government have got a problem with that because they only supposed to be funding pilot stages of projects, and then the university is supposed to take over the load of tutoring. Take over, because tutoring is crucial to all teaching and learning. Mentoring, take that over. Blackboard, take it over after you've seen the success, now take it over.
It hasn't happened.
Over nothing, so we just continue and look for funding for this and for that and that. So that is the dilemma that we are in. So those things where people were not appointed was because of the tutors. The UCDP used to work from March to March and not from January to January, their financial years. So then after the person finished, the tutor finished at the end of December, but they can't, and that person left the university now, graduated or whatever. There's nobody appointed for the first because there's no money. The money was for the, they had to wait until March. Like, lots of things like that, you know. But you have to talk with your HOD to be constantly in communication because we make plans for that. We cater for that, like pay in advance, almost like and keep the money and then pay it out. You know, things like that. We try and work around these things.
Okay, sure, lots of challenges. But let me tell you again, some of these challenges are unique to VUT and others are not. And where you have your unique challenges, other institutions have their unique challenges. So then, you know, it amounts to the same thing. And so you're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat, really. But it's about individual agency, about you as an individual, what is possible. It's also about institutional culture, how things have been done all along, and what is possible, what can change and what cannot change. I know there's a move in the direction of getting the institution to change, and so it's not as if this is what it is and we just have to accept. It's an ongoing struggle. It's a matter of having hope. If you don't have hope, I mean, I told about the community of practice where for school leadership, for school principals. When you and what struck me about that, and supposed to hand in the evaluation reports in the next week or two. What struck me about my interaction with school principals was the sense of hopelessness. It was like, we tried this, we tried that, we're doing this. Really, it makes no difference. And when we reach that point, it is very dangerous. It's really very dangerous, because if we're reaching a point where we're saying there is no hope, then
Some of us letting it be so long. We passed that point long ago.
So I can see, from my observations, I haven't been at VUT very long. It's like there's every type of thing that every other university has. Like you're talking about pre-selection. There's NBT. VUT has paid a license for NBT as well. Like the same thing that has.
All the other
the
institutions.
top of the range. They've got everything is sort of there, but nothing is integrated into the organizational processes and organizational culture type of a thing. Yes. And I think it's also got to do with people are not performance managed also. Like lecturers, there's no performance management type of a thing. Because like how, even if you integrate everything, how do you still control that the people are really doing what they're supposed to do? Somehow they've got to be
There's no
to
performance
their
management. I guess
achieve
what
also
they
something.
measure is your success rate. I don't measure
your 80% that you got through.
Yeah. So,
I don't measure that.
so I think it's not, and it's not as if only we are only aware of this. I think all the leaders are actually aware of these things, because that's why they are leaders. They actually do know everything much better than we do, and what is actually wrong with the organization and whatever. And it's probably going to take time for it to transform and really materialize, and the organizational culture to be transformative, and the processes to really work and whatever. And they do understand, because, I mean, the minute, it's not as if they don't want performance management, they probably do want it, but like at the same time as somebody, HR pushes for performance management, then somebody else will go to the union and say that, is this first negotiated with you? How's, and then it will be, and they will stall that process. So it's not as if, I don't think it's the leaders that don't want it to be implemented. Everybody wants the thing to work.
My aim and my leaders' aim I want my students to go to industry and be successful. They want to make this place profitable. That's why we're pushing for that. That's because we had a meeting this year saying to us, your numbers are not enough. We have to have more in this faculty. We have to have more, because the lectures are costing so much and we're getting only this much of money in. So it's all about money and making the balance sheets. Okay. And also, this performance that I've measured is how much students can I get passed. Doesn't matter whether they've learned anything or not, but there's the on that measure. So it's all about money and getting funding. So that's what our leaders are looking at.
And then, but the new DDC, VC, when he came, he said, if you've got that concern, what you're expressing now, write it to me directly in an email.
Okay, we had a funny
he said, write it to me.
Our professor took a box and said, we have to, whatever it is, put out complaints there. I gave my whole list of stuff. And apparently, and what he did is he scanned everybody's things, and he sent it by some email without a name. So they got this list of complaints from us, and they were very upset about it. And the response of one of the managers was, can we believe because there's no name associated with it? And some of us said, we completely stand up. My promotion is not coming in the next 3 years. It doesn't matter. I'll stand up and I will raise the complaints because I know what they are. And they realized that most of us, well, I think about everybody that hadn't seen that compilation letter. I know what I wrote, but I don't know what my colleagues wrote. I can guess what I wrote. But they said, okay, they don't send us those compilation of letters. We can all look at it before we discuss it. That's like 3 weeks ago. We haven't received anything. And that thing has just filled away, and it's gone.
The thing of writing to see.
All right. I'm afraid we're going to have to just move on now.
But it's on the topic of authentic. We're very much in VUT, we're very authentic, we're very real world, because the problem that we're sitting with all these teaching and learning problems is very ill-defined, and you have to... So we are in a very authentic context. The real context of South Africa. Even whatever happens in the ANC happens in the management of VUT. So we are so authentic people.
and that's why I've kind of just let it run its course, you know, the conversations that's coming out. Because if you look at those authentic learning principles, and which is also in your teaching and learning philosophy, it's not contrary to that. If you look at that, if you're saying you want your activities and your learning experiences that you're providing to students, if you're saying it must be authentic, then you've got to think of all these daily realities. What is possible, and how do we want to assess students so that it has meaning, it helps them. We're not assessing just for the sake of assessing students, just for the sake of giving them the qualification at the end of the day. We have so many social ills. Classic case yesterday was those protests. Classic case is the fees must fall.
And they said her face was seen next to the tricolour flag hanging from a bridge.
Yeah.
So her head wearing black was also criticized.
So in any case, yeah.
And we like the ANC for corruption.
Yeah.
Because last semester, they changed my semester marks and they changed my marks. And I reported it with paper proof, and nothing happened.
Who changed? Who's they?
I reported it to my dean and he had to take it further.
Okay.
And I had the paper proof of my original marks. And the paper proof of
and
the
they
ITS,
changed your
marks.
marks.
And a new ITS where the marks was changed.
Success rate too low.
So somebody there changed the test marks and the semester marks. And I reported it and nothing happened.
For the better.
But that's what Uma Lucy does for the marks of matric in any case, so...
But they didn't just change a few. They should have changed all of them.
That would make no sense.
Okay, so based on all of those challenges, what are the authentic learning elements that you can incorporate into your activities? If you look at an authentic activity, what does that actually mean? It means it's got to be relevant to the real world. It means it's got to be ill-defined. What do we mean by ill-defined? And I know ill-defined, the term has a negative connotation. In this case, it's not meant to be a negative thing. Ill-defined simply means that there is no clear right or wrong answer. Okay, that's not how life works. I mean, we've discussed so many challenges yesterday and today. And there is no one right answer. I wish I had those answers, but these are ill-defined problems that we have. And yet, when we give our students activities, we want a certain right answer. Only that one particular answer, that's it. And it's defined according to how I, as maybe the department or the individual lecturer sees it. This is one path to take to get to a solution. We talk about students not being critical, not being able to solve problems. But do we give them those ill-defined problems? That's the question we need to ask. Multiple sources and perspectives. Everything that we give them, is it just solitary on your own, you solve this? How does it work in the real world? Does each one in an organization just function on his or her own? Or do they put their heads together and try to solve it together? Get multiple perspectives. consult multiple sources? Do we do that when we set our activities? Do we have that collaborative activities? Under process, the process of learning. These are also your authentic learning elements. Sustained investigation, not a once-off activity, something that they do over a period of time. And sort of like, you know, your milestones. So you start off at the start of the semester, you investigate this. Then you build on that and you do something else. So all of those milestones will then lead to the final product. Do we do that without? That is what authentic learning is about. Collaboration, I touched on that already. Are they required to just do everything on their own, or are they allowed to consult? And when they do consult, do we see that as copying? What is there is a fine line between copying and collaborating. And often, because we're so used to working solitary on our own, if somebody else wants to consult or wants to get an idea or an opinion, then we say that's copying. So those are the things we need to also consider. Reflection, metacognition, that is what Faik was speaking about earlier. Thinking about your own thinking. How do I normally solve problems? What is the process of my thinking? What do I need to do to make sense of something? Do we allow students to do that kind of thing? Interdisciplinary, we spoke about that yesterday quite a bit as well. We all work in our silos. I mean, I mentioned the example yesterday about the schools in Finland who's trying to do away with the subjects and have these broad themes or topics and then investigate that from different angles. I'm not saying we definitely not going to do away with subjects anytime soon. I'm not suggesting that. But do we have that interdisciplinary consultations and engagement? And this, I think, is a good opportunity to do that. Polished products, the outcome of the learning. At the end of the learning, what are they coming out with? And I'm trying to model that by letting you come out with a product at the end, and that's why I want to push it, so that you can start with your products. Those products will be your activities that you're going to set. And we are here, and I haven't even spoken to my colleagues yet, but I'm sure all four of us, what's your colleagues' name? We can assist you. So each of you, after this, and I don't even think we're going to do activity 6. In fact, activity 6 and 7, it does, it is actually about you doing the actual activity for your module. Okay, but we're not going to do all the other stuff.
Maybe that's a good, if they could each like just present one little activity that's
yes.
in that thing, if they think about it.
That
even I can think. We each can.
We can.
In
yes.
my practice as well, to also role model.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I can think in the shoes of an instructional designer. How can I be authentic in presenting Blackboard to the lecturers or whatever, you know? So
yes. Yes.
We can all.
We can all exactly, but we'll. What I'm basically just saying is we will be here to assist as you're busy working on your activity. So you're going to come out with a polished product, and do we allow our students to come with a product? Do we allow them to create it? It goes back to Bloom's taxonomy. The highest level is to create something. Do we allow them to create a product? Integrated assessment. This is where we are now on assessment. Activities. Creating activities is part of your assessment. Is it not? You have continuous assessment, I'm sure. Do you? Yes. Not only the summative assessment, but you have your formative activities that you also. So this is about having that integrated assessment. So you set out to do, you've got your learning outcomes, you said this is what I'm going to assess, these are the activities I'm going to give you. Right? And you make sure that that alignment is there. Multiple interpretations and outcomes. Multiple interpretations going back to the multiple perspectives.
And the ill-defined.
And the ill-defined. Putting your heads together and coming up with an informed decision or a collaboratively produced product. So those are just authentic learning elements that you could use to make sure that what you are giving your students is something that they're going to use in the real world. It does not have to just be for the world of work. You can bring in the what's happening in the community. You can bring in those things. What's happening in South Africa, what's happening in the rest of the world. You can bring in those things. But I'm not saying that each and every activity has to have all those elements. In one particular activity, you can address the reflection. In another activity, you can have them do a polished product. It does not have to incorporate all the elements for all your activities. But when you do your activity now, which you're going to do, start on now, can you incorporate at least one or two of those?
Yeah. Or if you can also, the activity, the authentic activity can allow for multiple assessment opportunities in the end, because the assessment opportunities does not only have to be summative, can be formative as well throughout the activity.
Absolutely,
well.
And that's
like
your
that well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your where's that? Sustained investigation.
Yes, so it can be a long-term activity with multiple assessment opportunities, incorporating both summative and formative.
Absolutely. I'm not even going to go. This I did last night, and it just spoke to some of the stuff that we mentioned yesterday. You know, coping with assessment, grading, our students being so focused on grades, and this guy, I don't know if who's on Twitter here.
Derek.
Besides Derek, yeah. Derek and I met on Twitter long before we actually met face to face. So anyway, this guy Jesse, the author of this, he is brilliant, and he talks about critical pedagogy, which and that's I follow him because for me it is about the critical pedagogy. So if you are interested, please have a look. But and I think there are some ideas that can inform the way you structure your activities. So I also in the resources that I gave yesterday, there's a course structure. There's a couple of tools that you can use. There's also this assessment map. If you find it useful, you know, you can use this as well. I'm not saying, so there are tools, there are toolkits that can help you. You can go back to the framework, you can go back to the assessment map and so on. But you decide how you want to structure your activity. I also gave you in the reading pack, I gave you, let me just do that. This template of how we do the activity. So you start with activity so-and-so, say number 4, what is the title of the activity, the purpose, the task, the response, and the feedback. So you could even use that template to structure your activity if you feel it's useful. Or otherwise, I'm basically leaving it open to you. I'm just saying those are templates that can help you to structure it. Okay, so you're starting on your activities. We're going to break for lunch at 12:30 until 1. Okay. After lunch, you're going to continue with your activities, let's say till 2. And then that last hour, you will then come and present your activity. Is that okay? Is that enough time? Okay, let's see how far we get.
And this one thing this person writes, if you don't read anything, just read that thing. He condenses his pedagogy into 4 words. Start by trusting students.
Yep.
And then they disappoint you.
Start by
We should.
We leave it at that.
Yeah.
If anybody comments on that, they can judge for themselves whether they trust or not.
Can I also just say that your activity that you're doing is the start of the activity that you're going to then put on Blackboard. So this is the start of the activity. Remember I said to you, you're going to sit with another group with Eiffel?
Yes.
Eiffel?
Yes.
And they will help you to get your activity on Blackboard. They will advise you, work through it with you.
All our stuff is here. We've done
It's already
Yes, it's been years for us.
Yes.
But for
I
this
think
this
role in
particular,
that, their role in that, if you've done like everything, it will just then be something where they will beautify or make it into a standard thing, so that everybody, all the people, you will become the model for what must be in a template type of a shelf thing for other people in your department who will also be implementing blended learning.
I've already
You
done it.
understand?
I'm now the person they, so everything I'm touching looks the
So
same.
we're just going to standardize it so that other people can then also use that in your department.
I'm making it for them. I've got all the templates and I'll have
Yeah. So we're going to get it accepted by the HOD and everybody that this is a template for chemistry and whatever, you know? So we're moving in that direction.
But even for now, do I need to write this activity or can I show you the activities I have and you can tell me what's wrong with it?
maybe let's look at your activity, not what's wrong with it, but how we can improve on it, if at all. I mean, there's always.
Or how we can learn from your activity. If you've got a beautiful activity already, let's learn from it. Share it with all of us.
I mean, can I maybe ask, because we can turn this around where you actually come and show your activity. If all of you already have your activities, then we do sort of a showcase, a show and tell.
Yeah.
And then we can't. Are you comfortable with that? Because I was going to say then we will comment on it. Are you comfortable with that?
And even those who don't have can design something. You know.
So, who already has activities? Oh, there's 2, 3,
5,
4,
6.
6.
Yeah.
Okay.
7 with Rishi. Most
So-
it seems to me as if we've got 2 groups of learners,
Yeah.
we split the workshop into 2 parts, and I've got some peer review activities that you can follow.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to suggest that because this is the review tool, and yeah.
Can we have a show and tell that they can show us what to do?
Oh, and then you kind of.
I'm not
Okay.
sure what the activity is.
Okay.
Somebody
So there's a suggestion.
volunteer with a show and tell.
Okay. There was a suggestion that we split the group, and those that's already got activities, that you use the review tool and give each other, so you do the peer feedback, right? And then the others have time to then work on their activities. But now the other suggestion here is that we have some show and tell now already, and then it can guide them when they do their activities. Are you okay with that? Do you want to do that? Okay, so it's 15:15, so we probably only have time for one now, before 1 or 2, before lunch. So, would you like to come? Oh, thank you. So just would you mind just
I understand what I mean.
Okay, this is not for the subject that was chosen for me. This is one of the other subjects I teach, but the calculation subjects, most of the communication happens in class, the information goes out on Blackboard. But for this subject, which was safety, I could use Blackboard in a different way. The first, we called it an assignment, which isn't here. I created a discussion group, and on the discussion group, students had just to say what do they understand under safety. And the idea was just to get everybody to connect to Blackboard, make sure the class list is ready, all of that. So, and then my first assignment then was, there was some videos under content. They had to watch those, so they went to content. Learning Unit 1, and they had to watch the video on the definitions of safety. Then they had to read the textbook, what is there, and then this now actually counted marks. They had to write a paragraph on Blackboard, submit it, and I just marked it through a rubric. The idea was, 1, if you handed it in, 2, if you knew what was going on. It was a very generalized sort of. From there, a next section was to read articles. I gave them references to articles. They had to access the articles. Then they had to look at most dangerous jobs and find them. The whole idea here was they had to find the statistics. Where do you look for safety statistics? In South Africa. Which books, internet, which sites? That was the aim of the assessment. Do you know where to find the safety statistics if you need to do a safety evaluation? Then the last assignment, it was about halfway through the course, on this specific section, I made 20 different assignments. I told the class, group yourselves into groups on Blackboard, and each group must now hand in that assignment, once again on Blackboard. Now the assignments took this form. Oh, come on. Oh, no, but then I'm in the assignment go. Where did I put it? On the groups then. Well, yeah, that's how I must open it. Okay.
Please register yourself under groups.
Yeah, but I want to see my assignment.
Oh, the group assignment.
Yeah. Let me just see. Maybe I've put it into content.
Final assignment.
Now, this wasn't even the final one. This was just a middle one, but it counted as a test, as a big test. Oh no, that's my presentations. No, sorry, I cannot find it now and I don't know why.
Okay, just this one.
Okay, I gave each group, it must be under response. I gave each group a picture. Those funny pictures you get about safety. There's many people in it. One is falling off a ladder and the paint is falling on another one and someone is drowning. Those where is Wally type of pictures. So each group got a different picture. Then each group in that picture had to look at it and identify 3 safety hazards. Then they had to describe the hazard. Then they had to come up with strategies how to minimize or eliminate that hazard. They had to find safety signs that would fit that hazard, which should be in that venue. And then they had to do a risk assessment according to the risk assessment table, giving this risk a specific value. And then each group, they had to be between 6 and 10 in a group because it's a very big class, had to hand in their assignment. Then we looked at it. Just looked at it, no marking, and then they could make a second admission.
Oh, so that's your sustained.
Yeah, this was one activity for half of the work. Then the next half we wrote a test because there must be tests according to the... But that is the type of activity that is typically on Blackboard for the students.
Okay, so just those review tools that I gave you. If you can just have a look at that and then somehow give your input as to those activities. You know, the authentic learning, the sustained, is it ill-defined, that kind of thing. So we're looking at what's there. We're not critiquing, we're not saying it's not a good activity. We're just saying, so even if you just identify elements that you see in what was presented now. Yeah, it's this review tool that I gave you yesterday.
Yes.
Because this is meant to guide you when you do your activities so that you take into account those things. And it's also useful in reviewing what you've done. So sort of, it's almost like a rubric type of thing, you could say, you know. So I don't know if you want to say, and I mean, but because there might be questions.
Just curious. I just want to know if your students, when they are doing their assignment, do you want written assignment or do you want them typed?
In this case, they have to type it and attach it on Blackboard. But for the other subjects I do, that's mathematical, they write and hand in.
Just to answer that, because we teach them how to upload on Blackboard. So on our side, when you want them to upload, is it a link that you open on your side? Because that's what we teach with ICT. Because they'll go and type.
There's 2 different ways. This last big assignment, they did on that attach the document to the way you can do. The short one, they just write that paragraph in Blackboard directly. And the difference comes in, those I assessed individually, but the group assignment is one assignment, but because they've enrolled in a group, it shows all their
You know what my concern? I wish all our colleagues could encourage the learners to type their assignment. Because we teach them how to use computer functions, but we don't really dwell in typing. That will help to improve their typing skills.
Now they type, they need to input tables, they need to input graphs, and they many of them
we are happy with our service. While we are saying you are happy with our service.
it is the same for everybody. You will ask him, you have half of your class being competent and half of your class being not competent.
The problem is they only do this for 4 months. After that 4 months, they don't get practical experience to apply their skills. Hence, we'll encourage each and every lecturer from first year to their final year BTech, please ask them to type their assignment.
For us, for engineering,
help them to
they type, for instance, for chemical engineering, they type at least 5 reports every single practical semester. They use the skills a lot, but as I tell you, And I'm not blaming you. I've taught a subject, they taught a foreign subject, and the students told me, no, I didn't teach them that. It works that way. So half of them don't carry the knowledge, and half of them does bring it to work.
Yeah, let's interrogate the intervention.
Yeah.
If the groups came up with the interpretations and whatever, was it open to debate whether that picture was demonstrating a certain hazard, and to somebody else could have debated that that was demonstrating a different hazard?
In their group, they could do that. For second submission, it was more an issue of, I would see the group and look at this thing and say, okay, you did not do this, you think this is right, here you need to add more information. I just didn't want it to be, here it is done, and now you got a bad mark and you're stuck with it. So it was within that specific group, and myself and the tutors, the two tutors for the subject.
But were there also elements of the pictures that were sort of like ill-defined, that we could debate about what explicit hazard?
I'm thinking you could have, but these are first-year students, so that is not the level that we teach them at. The idea was there's many hazards. There's about 20 hazards on each page. Can you identify 3? Can you come up with sensible suggestions of how to minimize, or because every student says then, no, you must take it away, but that is not an option for most things. So you have to make them aware. Many hazards cannot be taken away. They can only be limited in some way. So that was more the idea, but it was, my opinion, quite well defined. You either fell down the stairs or there was a hot. It was well defined. Not ill defined.
And just to ask, you allowed them to create their own, to sign up to groups.
Yeah.
And
they could sign up to their own groups.
And your reasoning behind that? Why?
They need to work together. So me forcing them together might get a situation where 1 or 2 people cannot join that specific group. If they group themselves, it means they know each other, they can get together with each other. It's not logistically difficult for them to find the time to work together in a group.
And so how did you grade that? Because I'm assuming that one person uploaded the joint assignment.
Yeah, the group for the group.
And the group got, all of the group members got the same
in our
mark.
first, but in our first, remember all the marks now come together into one mark. The 4 steps come together in one mark, so there's an individual component in the paragraphs, and then there's the group component. There's different components to the mark. In the group, what happened is, in our session where we first just looked at what they did, they could then say, is everybody happy that the whole group gets the same mark, or is there someone they want to remove from the group, or is there someone that's not good? They had that time to complain. My rule was, once it is in and marked, no complaints. I don't care who worked or not. This is now your chance to change something, be unhappy or whatever.
Yeah. Does the, when you look at these, when they're evaluating each other's or their own group's product or answers, does it take into consideration the things that really happen in industry? Like, would you put something about NOSA? You know?
No, we don't. We work with the Act. They need to find the relevant actions of the OSH Act fitting with those specific hazards.
Okay.
They
so
each
you
have
do
an OSH Act book, and that fits with
yeah, so that's good, I would say, because that is also one of the things that I would...
That is how we evaluate if the strategies they come up with is sensible for preventing that.
Anyone, just based on this, any comments, any questions? Especially the parts, the number 2 and 3. What will students learn? How will we support the learning? And then actually number 3 is, how do we know that they've learned? Any comments? And I guess 5 as well. Quality. How do you ensure quality?
Yeah, that's what we know.
For myself, I have an issue with that. In the groups, you get one person doing the thinking, and you get many people doing nothing in the thinking part. And the one person, because he wants to control or she wants to control the whole thing and get good marks, they don't always listen to the input of the rest. That's why I also add the individual component to the mark. Because in a group, you get that situation. Everybody in the group does not learn equally.
Exactly, and all contribute equally. And for that reason, you have, I had a lecturer that when I was at this, she used to use the wiki tool where they co-create a product, okay? But the wiki tool will tell you who contributed what. So it actually shows you the contribution of each participant in that group, so that students can't hide behind the leader. Often they want to choose a leader and then they think that that particular leader has to do everything or most of the work. And they hide behind that person, like you said, the person that's really motivated and wants to do well and just, runs with the process and everyone else just follows. So one way of getting away from that is like you did, to have the individual mark also and give them the opportunity to actually say, no, this one did all the work, that one didn't do anything. So you gave them that opportunity, which I think was great. Often they would just say, no, it's fine.
Mostly they say, no, it's fine, but often when you get once you've marked, then they come. That one didn't, or this one actually helped, but we didn't put his name. Or on the first year level, I must say my S4 students, they work differently. They contribute, they write, they work different. But for the S1s, I found it very difficult to get them to work in a group in a way that made any sense. Where my S4s know what to do, they are different.
And when you review, when they come with those queries and things, do you also sort of like accommodate for them to give suggestions to improve your practice, your activity?
I didn't. Well, my S4s I do. They know. They will tell me, no, please put this up, or we don't know how to do this. Can you put an example of this type of calc? The S4s will do that. But the S1s, it is a different way to teach them. You need to
scaffold a bit more.
You need to carry them more than.
Okay. I see that, okay, so lunch is not here yet. I think very much, I think it was very brave of you and well done. Thank you. Can we have another person come? I mean, there were 6, 7 people that said they already
I don't
had.
mind doing it, but I need a certain type of cable. HDMI.
Is it mine one day?
No, I need a cable that runs to that projector.
What type do you need? HDMI?
HDMI.
That's the one with the little pin.
This one.
You can use but ours will be different. Use a Blackboard, right? You can use
I've got a HDMI now. I need a HDMI from there to my laptop. But I've got a.
I'm not sure if I have it, but I do have it.
I don't have my adapter yet, that's why.
What was I told my people?
Otherwise, you could email it. So you can log in from mine.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe I'll see. Although, okay. Let's try.
No, nothing. We're still waiting. It was supposed to be this week before they give us permission to leave. Nothing yet. You never know. They're so busy.
Yeah, but maybe let's try one thing. One thing.
Okay.
Might just work.
Okay. I see. Yeah.
Maybe they need the.
Do you want him to put on the mic?
Oh, yes.
That's when I could leave it on the table if I pick them up.
Oh, it's okay?
I'll see if it comes up.
It does.
It does take some time. Good.
And also in our, we're thinking about reflective practice. So if you find that these things are a bit too vague or you don't know how to relate to all of these items, please look at the review tool and how we can improve the review tool.
Exactly,
as
simplify it.
Yes.
I've just got a question. Because if you look at the EXA requirements for engineering programs, especially at the diploma level, they say that all the problems that we give the students have to be well-defined problems.
Well-defined and not ill-defined.
Not ill-defined. Ill-defined only comes at, what's it, BEng Tech level.
Yeah.
But
that's a
we
difficult
have
one
to
because
scaffold it in a way you can do that type of thing, but let it count less or let it count nothing, so that when they get to the BEng, they've already experienced some of that.
It's the same as when we talked about Bloom's taxonomy yesterday, and we said that some people think that no, you can't do the higher level, the higher cognitive level skills in first year. You only do that when they get to third year, whatever. But how do we get them there? You've got to, like you say, scaffold it. So you introduce it slowly. And I don't know if that's an option for you to get them to that level, because all of a sudden now they postgrad, they masters, and now we're expecting them to think at a different level, but they're not. They've never been required to do that, maybe, or they don't know how to do that. It's not working.
No, I'll just know about it. Yeah, let's try it.
Sure.
Can I? The works this way. You guide them the length, you ask them get the area. When you give them the area and you ask them the length, then it's ill-defined. Not defined at all. They've never seen a problem like
Can I have a very technical question. When you presented, I saw some IE popped up. Do you always use IE? Internet Explorer, sorry.
No, I don't know. I use that one that has the different colors in the outside.
Oh, that's the
Chrome. Oh, I don't know why I saw IE. Oh, I just wanted to comment that the version of Blackboard that you're using 9.1, sorry, you can go ahead, is very, I know it can be very problematic if you're using if you're using Internet Explorer. It displays better if you use Chrome or Firefox.
That's what we show students, that it's easier to work with Google Chrome than Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
Well, we find it's vice versa. When you need to go on ITS, for example, it's easier to work with Internet Explorer than Google Chrome. So it depends on the specs of the PC.
Yeah, from my desktop, I prefer to use Internet Explorer. From my laptop, I prefer to use Chrome.
It's exactly what we show them.
Yeah. It's like desktop is just set up with editing of beauty, and it looks like beauty setups work better with Internet Explorer.
That's why I don't understand why they should go beauty. Just type beauty, ITS, and you'll be there.
Yes, exactly. That's what we teach them.
Taking in control panel.
Forward the beauty email to their preferred emails or something
That's
like
what we will. Well, we teach them to change their profile where they can put their
beauty. Okay, but what about beauty?
That one is something else. I don't know.
But the best I can handle with that one is to tell them your personal email, go into your beauty email, your student email, at least once. And in there put a forwarding email. You know, even if something comes from CD, you'll get it on your phone.
Okay, I think our colleague is ready.
Okay. I think I've used a lot of what Courtney has used. I just want to show a few different things that I've done. Maybe that's my content. So what I've got here is a list, some articles that I share with my students, and then links to videos that they could use as well as my slides that I share with them after the lecture, and some guidelines for the project which they can download and look at. But what's interesting I want to show here is this submission box here. Yeah, so what I do require my students to do is to submit their research assignments as well as their project reports through Turnitin via Blackboard.
Does everybody know what Turnitin is?
So I use this extensively at the BTech level, and I find it's very useful. So my students have to go through this process. If they're going to submit their assignments, there's no alternative method of submission. So I know when I do receive their reports that it has gone through that process and it is within the acceptable level as well. So that's a handy tool.
And can I maybe just ask, what is an acceptable level? Because
well, I've
it
used,
seems to be open and it's per department or per faculty sometimes.
I prescribe 25%.
25.
Yeah.
And is it oh, okay, you've only got BTech.
Yeah, BTech level.
Would it be different for different levels? Like the first year, would it be a little bit more, or would it be the same?
There's a lot of discussions around it. Now, I'm not sure if the policy has been made, because our library says 20%. We had an outside company teaching our postgrads how to write the proposal and so on, and they said 10%. So,
it should vary according to subject.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you are doing a science subject, naturally there are going to be a whole lot of specific equations that you quote that Blackboard measures, Turnitin measures against its big database. Whereas if you're writing an English submission, you can expect things to be pretty much original.
well, our literature review is not so much equations, it's a story you need to tell.
Okay, but then again, you guys, as I understand it, you guys define then what is acceptable for yourself. It shouldn't be someone else deciding that.
It's supposed to become open. In my opinion, 25 is too much. If I had my choice, I'd go for 10.
Yes.
Because if you start copying things, it means you're not internalizing the information. You have to read it, tell it your own. And I've now seen a master's one that came up as 6%.
Yes.
And the person just write your own simple English and it's fine.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start copying, then...
And Turnitin is not a plagiarism detection software. It's a similarity index.
Yeah.
So somebody could be similar, but I could be allowing so many number of quotes in my subject, and that is legal, it's quoted, but it's similar. The similarity shows whatever percentage. So it's the interpretation of the Turnitin report that you get that's important. And the settings that you set up before, like to include certain number of words, the prepositions, the pronouns and things like that, those things must not count. So you exclude it. All of those settings and how you interpret in the end. But I also want to say that the assessment policy is under review. They're rewriting the whole assessment policy of UT at the moment. They started with the first meeting the top level management of each faculty. They finished that first round, and I don't know what's the next process, but you all will have a say into that. And the minimum type of specs and things for plagiarism should also come in there, because universities do have that. As much as they let it open to each one deciding, but each one deciding is according to your settings and your interpretation. But there must be some sort of benchmark which you can have a say into in the assessment policy.
And then these are the problems
Yeah, it's
waiting for cache.
It's buffering for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, Turnitin is obviously something like that, because it's a third party outside even to the Blackboard thing.
And if the student has submitted the same thing now again, an updated version, we're just going to remove the old one, or excluded.
Yes, and those are all sorts of considerations, because if you're doing a project and it's not really worth research value, do you really let it be written to the databases, the international databases? You know, there's a setting. There's a setting that you've got to decide. Do you want these things to be written to the databases? Or is it so important to you to check each other's copying work from each other within the same group? Then you have to write it, because then it will copy from the first one to the second one, the second one to the third one to the second one, like that. So you have to then do that. But it's also decisions that you have to make when you, and we can help you and assist you with those things of interpreting the reports and setting up the correct settings.
I think I need to go for that. I'm only sitting on stuff to international.
And then that is what my manager also, she says those things must go to the library. We mustn't get involved in too many of these things. But I do realize that lots of people haven't got much experience with, even in the library, with using and interpreting the reports of Turnitin.
Now you get your login details and you have fine on your own.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, you'll have to just check. It looks like there's some error there, but that's not to...
Oh, it is actually. Interesting.
But maybe you can just explain to us, Richie, what processes you followed in the intervention.
You mean
in the activity?
Oh, okay.
The activities.
Yeah.
What, for that particular one you're talking about, if I do receive those reports, then I do scrutinize them as well, especially those borderline cases as well, because there is some subjectivity in the software as well. So I do go through it to ensure that you know, it is not simply pulling out mundane things like contents and, you know, topics and so forth. So I do scrutinize it. I remove those that are causing the extra percentages of similarity. I remove them to bring it within acceptable limits. But the students know from the start, if it is way above 25%, I'm not marking. They get a 0. So they do have multiple attempts to submit, so I do allow that. They have the box open well in advance, probably a month or so in advance, and I set it up so that every subsequent submission overrides the previous one. So they can submit, check the plagiarism. If it's over 25, make the corrections and resubmit until they get to a point where it is within the acceptable limits. So when they do their final submission on the final date, that to me is what I base my final decision on. So I haven't had too many issues. I think students use that the system well enough, and they understand it. They know the implications. They can't afford to fail, so they do utilize it the way that I ask them to. Some of them have notified me that there are issues whenever they are outside to submit, but when they get to the library staff members assist them to put on their information as well and to go through that.
If you have to reflect when you were learning at that level, when you were a student, wherever you studied, how would that type of assignment compare with what you had to what was expected of you to complete when you were a student?
Well, I like to believe that we're on the same standard at least. Okay. However, I know when we did our assignments, we were not required to submit Turnitin. So typical students would just get information from any source and utilize it in their assignments. Okay. Not me in particular, but yeah, this is quite handy, I believe, now for the new age student, and to ensure that our standards are well maintained as well.
And then the content of the problem. sorry, the content of the problem, the type of problems that you're giving to them to write about, is it similar?
Okay, this I wanted to show you some very nice stuff there as well, but it is a design problem.
After lunch, I'm going to try and just sort out that, and then you can present it. But you can talk us through it.
Yeah, it's a design problem, so every student's design is unique. There's no ways that a student will design something exactly the same as the next student. So it's left to their creativity. I give them the guidelines which they should work within, but every student's project is different to the next. So there is complexity, there's the design element, the creativity element that comes in that. That's true. Sometimes it happens, but it depends on the settings as well that you put in. There's quite a number of settings that you can put in, and the way that you do put in those settings will affect what it picks out and what it doesn't.
Yeah. And I look at this person's English as a word.
Yeah.
So some of those peculiar sentences I put into Google, and I found the original PDF, and it was
That's true. One student of mine, he took a French article and interpreted it into English and submitted it as an English copy. And of course, the plagiarism would be zero.
Yeah.
So when I read through it, I could see that it was not proper English. You could see that the structure and grammar of that language was obviously not from an English background. So you're going to have to do that, unfortunately. You may not take everything for granted that you see on the system.
Yes, because then it only compares with academic databases, not with things that's not non-academic.
It wasn't non-academic writing because it was peculiar English.
And then maybe just in terms of those authentic learning principles, well, what have you incorporated into your activities? You know, the real-world relevance, the ill-defined, the collaborative, the reflective.
Well, right from the start, I don't use a textbook for my subject because this is a current subject where current knowledge should be drawn on. So all my students' work is they retrieve their information via the VUT online databases, so online journals. They have to access those journals in order to get the latest information about what is happening in the field. So there's no way that you can use a textbook that's 5 years old to do something that's as current
as what's happening now.
When they give you the references, you also say that certain references are too old. If I just
I say 5 years. 5 years is my cutoff, and I do stipulate a minimum number of articles that they should access, in order for them to draw up their reports. And unfortunately, I have to show them how to do it because I don't know if they don't learn it. They haven't learned it, but I have to show them how to access those online databases.
And for interest's sake, like somebody like Vera, would it easily be able to say that certain articles are too old? She also brings in the theory, the whole theory. So she should be able, if she's going to see what she's preaching, then she shouldn't allow one old reference even to come in there.
You talk about language, it's something that just happens.
Yes.
Yes. But some students that they went to some of the old ones. I thought, this is one, I haven't read it. And I couldn't find it. And this abstract German. I thought, smart. So when this happens, then I read something else. It's probably the reference, but I never read the reference.
Okay, thank you so much.